I thought he'd never find out I was with my ex until he came to me with divorce papers in hands.
I never knew that one mistake would lead to me divorcing my husband and making my husband hate me forever. I thought that the friendship I had with my husband's boss was never going to be the problem, but it later cost me a great loss because I lost my husband and also my best friend. My fellow Redditors, my name is Mary and I am 30 years old. I am also an event planner, and event planning has been my passion for so many years. The name of my husband is Gabriel, and he is 35 years old and he is an architect. Gabriel and I got married about 3 months ago, and it has been great. Gabriel and I met through a mutual friend, and it was love at first sight. Gabriel was very charming at first, and I really thought he was just doing so in order to get me, but I was very wrong. Anne is one of my best friends. I met her in college, and ever since we have been together through everything. It was Anne's birthday party in summer last year, and like every other year since college, she decided to throw her usual birthday parties. I knew she could always go all out for those parties, and I always supported her. It was like every other day I was having lunch with Anne when she brought up her party that was coming up. As usual, we discussed the details, and I looked forward to the party like always. On the day of Anne's birthday, I got ready to attend, and I dressed to impress like always. I got to the venue, and I wished my best friend a happy birthday. She asked if I should go with her to say hello to the guests, and I accepted. It was such a lovely evening. Few hours into the party, I was already feeling exhausted, and I went to meet Anne, who was across the room when I ran into someone. I quickly apologized and left. I met Anne, and I told her I was leaving, but she insisted I should still stay a little. We were speaking when a man joined us. Anne proceeded to exchange pleasantries, and I was left standing. Anne later introduced us, and I discovered it was the same guy I ran into earlier. I apologized again, and Anne told me all about him, saying he was the guy she had been telling me about, but I knew she was just trying to set us up because I didn't know anyone like that. Anne left me standing with Gabriel, a guy I didn't know at that point, and I was very mad at her, but I knew she meant well because I hadn't been in a relationship in a while. Gabriel and I got speaking, and he told me a lot, but himself, and I asked him why I never met him. Even when he was very close to my best friend, and he said that he normally sees me afar, but he didn't know if I was spoken for. I told him he could have just come up to me, but he never did until then. I told Gabriel I needed to leave because I had an event the next day. We didn't get to exchange numbers. I said my goodbyes to Anne, promising to meet up for lunch in a couple of days. The next day, I was booked for business because I had an event I was taking care of. I kept thinking about Gabriel because I had a very good evening with him. I knew some of the people at Anne's event, but his company was the best, and I later found out at that moment that I didn't get his number. I felt sad because I had thought maybe he didn't feel the same way. That's why he didn't ask for my number. I decided to just let it go and not worry over a guy who might not have any interest in me. The next day I met up with Anne and we talked about fashion like we always do, but she brought up Gabriel and I told her we were just talking at her event, that there was nothing more to it. And I also told her that it wasn't that serious, because if it were serious, he could have asked for my number, but he didn't. Anne was surprised, and she went on to talk about how I shouldn't just wait for the guy to ask what I should have just given him. Anne, between the two of us, is the most forward. She could always get any guy she wanted. She always went for whatever she wanted. Anne somehow got my phone and dialed Gabriel's number before I could say anything to her. Gabriel picked the phone, and I had no choice but to talk to him. I told him I was the one, and he was kind of surprised it was me because he wasn't expecting me to call, and I told him we never got around to exchanging numbers. We spoke for a few minutes, and he had me out for lunch, and I accepted. I ended the call, and I didn't know what to do with Anne. I felt embarrassed. I called him because I didn't want to look desperate. But like always, we laughed over it, and I told her I had lunch with him the next day. That evening, I went to see my father. It had been a while since I knew we were repairing our relationship, because for a long time, I never knew who my father was, and at some point I was able to find him, and I didn't know how to feel because I felt like he abandoned me, but instead I discovered that he never knew I existed. He asked for a chance to be in my life, and I gave it to him. I didn't want to punish him for what he didn't know anything about. I had dinner with my dad, and he kept trying to be everything and more for me, and I appreciated it. I went home tired from a long day, and I slept off. The next day I went to work, and I met a couple who were planning to get married, and I was in awe. They were so in love, and I felt jealous because I wanted to have someone I could share my life with in that manner, but I didn't want to think too much into it because I usually overthink things and stress myself out. I finished with the couple and it was already lunchtime. Not long after that, Gabriel came to pick me up. He took me to my favorite restaurant. I didn't know how he knew, but I was sure it was the work of Anne. She had her name written all over it. Gabriel charmed me as usual, and we had a good time. He told me about how he had lost his family and how he had never been the same. I was feeling very sad for him because I knew what it felt like to not have any family. We finished our lunch, and Gabriel dropped me off, promising to see me later in the week. It had been a month since I last heard or spoke with Gabriel. I didn't understand why he could ghost me in such a way. I thought we were doing great. I tried to reach him a couple of times in that month, and he didn't respond. I concluded that maybe he wasn't into me as I was. I also thought maybe I was too forward. Few days later, Gabriel showed up at my store and told me he had been busy with work and he was sorry. I understood because I knew how work can be. We went out a few times, and in those times we became very close. We went out on a couple of dates, and he finally asked me out and I accepted. I was finally his girlfriend. I thought he took his time though because I was expecting it for a long time. Gabriel and I dated for some months and our relationship grew into something beautiful. I met some of his friends and it was really lovely. Anne kept going on and on about how she was the one who brought us together. But I never gave her the satisfaction because I had always said she never really introduced prior to that day, and we had been attending her parties for years. I kept teasing her about it and she loved it. Gabriel proposed to me a few months later and I panicked at some point. I didn't know what to say and Gabriel gave me some time to think about it. I appreciated it because he was not trying to rush me and I was happy. I talked to Anne and she explained to me how Gabriel loved me and he could do anything for me. She reassured me and that was everything I needed. I said yes to Gabriel the very next day and he was ecstatic. We planned our wedding and it was beautiful. I never felt so much happiness. My dad had worked me down the aisle and I had never seen him so proud. After the wedding, Gabriel had asked me to move in with him, but I didn't know what to say. I had told him that we should look for a place together and make payment together, but I changed my mind because I was very busy with work after the wedding, because I had taken some weeks off. But seeing that house hunting could be another problem added to my work schedule, I decided that we move in together. We started living together and things were going smoothly. We could wake up together, eat breakfast before going to work. We had our regular dinners with friends and family, and I always felt safe around Gabriel. He was almost everything I wanted and more. He would listen to me and solve any issue I had. I was in the store finishing up a meeting with my client when Gabriel came in. He had told me his boss was having his birthday celebration the next day. I was surprised he was just telling me, but he said that it was just planned and it was a surprise party for him. I told him I didn't know his boss because he was not at the wedding and he said he was out of town for work then. I decided to go with him because I didn't want Gabriel by himself. I thought to ask Anne to get me something to wear, and like always, she delivered and I loved it. The next day, I got ready with Gabriel and we went to the party. We got to the venue and it was packed. Gabriel introduced me to some people and we talked for a bit. Things were going smoothly and I excused myself to go to the restroom. I finished up and headed back to my surprise. The birthday boy had already walked in. I couldn't see him because a lot of people had gathered around him. I went out to call Gabriel saying I had to leave because it was getting late, but he insisted I see his boss before leaving. I accepted, and not long after he came to find me. We went together to meet his boss and say happy birthday to him, but he was busy with some important people and Gabriel asked me to wait a few minutes. We waited for an hour before we were allowed inside. At the moment, I was very pissed because I had to ask myself why he kept us waiting for that long. It wasn't fair no matter who he was. Few minutes later, we were asked to go in and see him. I was already pissed, but I made up my mind to just forget about it because of Gabriel. On getting inside, I received the shock of my life. I saw Ross, my ex-boyfriend, who left and didn't say goodbye. I couldn't believe that he was my husband's boss. I told myself I wasn't going to behave like I knew him because it had been so long, and I am already married, so Gabriel introduced us, and I could see the shock on his face too. He decided to play along with us, not knowing each other, which was fine with me, because I wasn't going to put Gabriel in the position where he had to feel his wife and his boss had history. We said happy birthday to him, and we left the office, and I kept wondering about how Ross was my husband's boss, and how weird it was to see him again. The next day, my husband noticed my mood and he asked me about it, but I told him it was nothing. I wasn't going to tell him I had a kind of relationship with his boss. I went to work like usual, and I decided to take my mind off things and bury myself in some work. After a while, Anne came around and we talked about Ross. She was surprised about the dynamics, but I had to tell her not to mention anything to Gabriel, because at that point, I wasn't going to pursue anything with him. But my friend Anne warned me to stay away from Ross because I was married, and he was the one who had left me alone when we were still together. I took her advice because I wasn't about to destroy the marriage I had with Gabriel. A few weeks later, I was at home preparing dinner when Gabriel got back from work. We ate, and he had brought up this story of how we needed to attend their yearly gala organized by his company. I did want to go, but when he had told me I was going to be considered with organizing it, I was very happy because that could be a huge plus to my store. I was happy until he told me he had suggested it to his boss, and I had to go see him the next day to make some preparation, and of course ask him a few questions. I didn't want to lose the opportunity because of my old history with Ross. I made up my mind to go, and I thanked Gabriel wholeheartedly because it was a huge opportunity and he made it happen. I got ready the next day because I had an appointment with Gabriel's boss, so I had to ride to the office with my husband. We got there and he kept me waiting like usual, but I remembered I was only there for my store and I knew this event could put us on the map. I entered his office and we greeted each other and I got down to business, but he said he needed to attend a meeting and that we should start the meeting by lunchtime. I was very angry because I knew he was messing with me. I decided to tell my husband the latest development about how his boss wanted to have a private lunch with me to talk business. He didn't see anything wrong with that, and he had said I should be patient. I went back to the office and I got started with work because I knew after that lunch, I was going to be so angry. It was time for lunch and I wasn't feeling it because I was discouraged, and I knew it was just going to open old wounds. I got down to the restaurant where we were having lunch, and I saw that Ross was early for the first time since I met him. I sat down and we got to business. He had told me how he wanted the event to be, and I took every detail down. Ross kept talking about us, and I was feeling exhausted about it, and I made it clear to him he was the one who had left me. He told me he had a good reason, but honestly, I didn't want to hear it. But Ross was persistent, and he asked me to please hear him out, and I did. He had told me he was left with no other choice because he had to pick between me and his family. I know Ross loved his family a lot, but I didn't know why he had to pick. He refused to tell me, promising to say it on our next lunch together. But I had explained to him that I wasn't going to keep having lunch with him because I was married. But he told me it was a harmless lunch that my husband was aware of. A few days later, we started preparing for the event. It was a big event, and I needed more hands to help out. I employed more people, and it was moving smoothly. But I still had lunch with Ross, which I kept postponing, but I knew I had to get around to going because we were going over the last details of our arrangement. I went to lunch with Ross, and we finished everything. He apologized about what happened a few years back, and I was happy because at least it was past us now. We can concentrate on the event. The day of the event came, and everything was set. I went to the event with Gabriel, and he was proud of what I had done with the place. Throughout the night, Ross kept staring at me, and I kind of found it weird, and when he came over to talk to Gabriel, his hand kept brushing mine. At some point, I felt like he was flirting with me, which was not appropriate. A few weeks later, Ross showed up at my store telling me he wanted to take me out to thank me for the event I organized, and I respectfully declined, but he insisted. I went out with him, and it was fun for us to have reconnected after a very long time. It was fun while it lasted. Ross kept sending me flowers after that day, and it was very nice. We talked on the phone for a few minutes in the day, and most days he had said he wished he had come earlier before I got married. He still loved me, and he wanted to make up for lost time. I decided to give him a chance in order for him to try. We went out for a few dinners, but I didn't see it as something that could harm my husband. But I knew I was lying to him, and I decided to stop. I discussed it with Ross about us telling Gabriel about us knowing each other, but he had said no, that it could complete things at work, and he didn't want to lose his best employee over what we had. I told him since we hadn't done anything bad, we should come out to Gabriel, but he refused. From that moment, my secret relationship with Ross grew. We kept seeing each other, and I became too comfortable. I felt like at some point my husband had suspicions about my late-night dinners, but he had thought it was just work. It was like every other day when I met up with Ross, and he had told me I should be creating enough time for us. I had to tell him I was married, and it could be very bad for either of us should my husband find out that we had been seeing each other secretly. But Ross kept asking for more time with him, which I gave in. Looking back now, I regret my decision because it had created problems for me. My husband and I started having issues all because I wasn't at home anymore. And most days I wasn't at the store either. But I had to lie to him that I was busy with different clients and they were taking my time. He believed me for some couple of weeks before Ross had gone out of town for a business trip. I wasn't happy because I found myself to be missing him. I made plans for Gabriel, and I should go out for dinner since we had been having issues for some weeks now. We reconnected and everything was okay before Ross returned. I went back to see him, and at some point we ran into Anne at a restaurant. I didn't know what to say because she had warned me to stay away from Ross, but I didn't listen to her. She pulled me aside and he told me I was making a big mistake going out with my husband's boss, but I didn't listen to her. I told her it was nothing. I went back to meet up with Ross, and I didn't know that Anne had already gone behind my back to call my husband to the restaurant. I didn't know Gabriel came in secretly and saw me and his boss together. Ross took me to his house, and we spent the night together. The next morning, I saw Ross sleeping naked beside me. I felt like I had committed a big sin because everything that Anne had said to me was true. I was going after someone who did not care about me, someone who had abandoned me. I quickly got ready and I went back home to my husband, planning to apologize to him and tell him everything that had happened. But I got home to see that Gabriel was very angry at me, and he already had the divorce papers signed. He didn't allow me to explain anything. He was very curious with me. I begged him to listen to me, but he said he could have considered forgiving me if I didn't sleep with his boss. I felt horrible because he kept guilt-tripping me, and I felt worse. Gabriel asked me to pack out of the house, and I did. I shouldn't have been deceived by Ross, who left me when I needed him, and when he discovered I was married, he came and ruined my marriage. Updates. Hello, guys. So I signed the divorce papers, and Gabriel and I are officially divorced. It was very exhausting. I was not happy because it took a great toll on me. I lost my husband due to my foolishness. I was happy in that marriage, and I knew that my husband loved me, but I went after someone who I wasn't sure of. I heard that Gabriel had resigned from work and he has started his own business. I was happy for him. And through everything that was happening, Anne had come clean to me that she was the one who sold me out to my husband. At first, I was very furious as to why she did that, but she said I was going to a place I wasn't going to come back from. I understand she was only doing that for me to see I was throwing away my marriage for someone who wasn't worth it. But looking back now, I wished it never destroyed my marriage. Ever since that night and everything that happened after, Ross hasn't called me. I tried calling him a few times, but he ghosted me. That had made what I did even worse because I lost both sides. My relationship with Anne hasn't been the same ever since. I lost all contact with Gabriel. I am now staying with my father, and he has been very supportive. I couldn't have gone through this without his support.
My husband and my affair partner teamed up together and ruined my life. I know I did wrong by cheating on my husband, and I take accountability for it. I wish I could rewrite all the wrongs. I regret every bit of it now. I was deceived and also dumped. My affair partner, whom I trusted so much, decided to make my life a living hell. Now I'm currently served with divorce papers and left with nothing. Hi guys, my name is Mirabelle, and I am a 27-year-old entrepreneur. I owned a store where I sewed clothes and sold them. I had always dreamt of being independent and doing what I love. I have passion for my job, and I design most of my outfits. I also have people working for me at my workshop, and I'm married to a software engineer, Frederick. He is 27 years old. My husband and I have been married for 5 years now. We have known each other since college. We started off as friends when we were in school. I met Frederick at one of the annual school events that year. We started off like friends. It was a mutual feeling for me, but for Frederick, he was more interested in getting to know me more. We eventually started dating and went out together. We studied together during exam periods and did a lot of things together in school. As high school lovers, we went to school parties together, concerts, and we had fun. While we were in school, Frederick was a responsible guy. He was very careful anytime we went to those parties. And that was one of the things I loved about him. He is so gentle and kind-hearted. Those that knew him in school loved him because of how coordinated he was, and he took his studies seriously. We had a big social circle among my friends. Some of them had boyfriends and girlfriends. Frederick and I were an extension. We all hung out together and, most importantly, studied our books. 1 year later, we all graduated from college. Frederick and I then decided to move to Virginia, where our family was based. From there, he started introducing me to his family and all his friends. I was invited a couple of times to his home to have dinner with his family. It was a family of 4, Frederick's parents and his sister. It happened that Frederick's mom and I shared the same name. We also had a lot in common. Frederick's family were very welcoming. I got to know more about each and every one of them. Being the only sibling that Frederick had, he was very protective of his sister Leah. Frederick never jokes about anything that has to do with Leah. Leah was also kind-hearted, just like Frederick. Their mom Gladys was also nice to me. She treated me like her second daughter. She didn't give me any reason to complain about anything. She always made sure I was very comfortable anytime I came around. Frederick's dad also was not an exception. They all treated me like I have known them for a long time. I also introduced Frederick to my family. They loved Frederick as well. I am from a family of 4. I have one sibling just like Frederick. I have a brother and his name is Jason. I love Jason a lot because he's more than a brother to me. We shared everything together and made memories. We were like besties. Everything really moved fast between me and Frederick. Both our families met on several occasions for dinner dates. We were like the perfect match. Our families were also in support of us coming together. I felt happy because I have found someone that loved me unconditionally. Before I met Frederick, I was unlucky with dates. Most of the guys that I had met only came to play around. But Frederick was different. I loved how he noticed every little detail about me. I was very happy to be Frederick's girlfriend. After a few months of graduation from college, Frederick then proposed to me to be his wife, which I accepted wholeheartedly because I loved him so much. Our families made arrangements for the wedding. They handled everything and did what was supposed to be done. I was happy that our families came through for us. The day of the wedding came and we tied the knot together. It was attended by both families and friends. It was a simple wedding. Everything went well and there was no drama of any kind. The wedding came to an end and everyone returned back to their respective destination. Frederick and I moved into our new house a few miles away from our parents. We started a new life as a newly married couple. I was happy to do life with Frederick. Few months of our marriage was blissful. We continued all what we did when we were single. We went out together and also attended a lot of family gatherings. Frederick got a job and he worked to fend for us. Not long after he got a job, I decided to chase my dreams and I opened a clothing store. I have always had a passion for sewing clothes and designing my own outfits. My store was moving really fast and everything went well. I get a lot of orders every week. I couldn't do the job myself because the workload was overwhelming, so I decided to employ some staff to help me out in the store. I also employed some staff that could also sew and design men's outfits. Not long after, my store was now a unisex store. My husband also helped me in putting things in order in my store. He also helped me with the marketing strategy and gave me a lot of exposure. What started like a small business grew into a full-blown one. I made outfits for my husband and his colleagues at work. I also made some for my family and even Frederick's. Everyone supported my business in the little way they could. A few months after I opened my store, one of my college friends, Diana, was getting married. I was very happy, and what even made me happy the most was that she gave me the contract to make the outfit for her bridal train. It was a huge contract, and so I dedicated a lot of time to it, and all the girls that were on the bridal train looked beautiful, and they also loved their outfits. Some of them even patronized me after the event was over. My husband didn't stop helping me to get more audience for me. Frederick was very supportive, and he took his time to make sure I was very comfortable while doing my job. Yes, guys, Frederick was working at his own workplace. He is a software engineer. His work didn't take much of his time, so he always comes back early from work. Sometimes I was the one that often stayed out late at night because of the kind of orders I do get. I have to meet up with them and also make sure that my customers are satisfied. And most times, Frederick was the one that did make the meals we ate and also took care of things at home. Sometimes, when I didn't get back home early, my husband would call to make sure I was okay, and waited for me to get back so we could go to bed together. There were times I went out of town to do work, and I stayed for a week or more. My husband never complained because he knew about the nature of my job. One day while I was at my place of work, my husband called me that I should come back early so we could have dinner at home. I told him that I would try to close up early, which he agreed, and we ended the call. That day, I planned everything and promised not to disappoint him. Unfortunately, When I was about closing the store, a customer walked in and said he wanted to have a shirt designed. It was an unfamiliar face, yet looked so handsome. I hurriedly declined because I didn't want to disappoint my husband, but he was persistent and pleaded with me to help him out because he was going to attend an event the next day. Our dinner was to start at 8 p.m., and he came around 7 p.m. I agreed because I had about an hour before the dinner date. As at the time he came, all my staff had already closed from work. I dismissed them early so they could rest that day. I reopened the store and ushered him in. I watched him while he walked around the whole place. He looked pleased with what he saw and commended my efforts. Few minutes later, he walked up to me and told me the type of style he wanted. I took out the fabric and started working on it. We talked about a few things before we introduced ourselves. He introduced himself as Derek, and he stretched his hands for a handshake. We shook hands, and I also introduced myself as Gladys. He went further and said that I had a beautiful place. I was happy about the compliment, and I thanked Derek. Derek told me about the work he was doing and how he recently moved to our town because of work. While I was working on his clothes, he kept on talking about a lot of things. He talked to me like we have known each other for years. Meanwhile, Derek and I were just meeting for the first time. At some point, I didn't pay attention to him because I got tired. He was engrossed in the conversation. I kept looking at the time all through to see if I could get home on time to meet my husband. But I was stocked up with the work. I tried calling Frederick to apologize ahead of time, but his lines were not reachable. At that point, I couldn't stop what I was doing, and I didn't want to disappoint Derek, because I had started working on the fabric already. He was a first-time customer, and so I didn't want to give him any reasons to complain. 2 hours later, I was done with the work. I gave it to Derek, but he insisted on giving it a try there, in case of any adjustment. I showed him a room where he could change. He entered the room, and I hurriedly packed up my things, ready to leave. Few minutes later, he came out. I was very happy about the dress, and also complimented my handwork. Honestly speaking, guys, he looked smart in that dress. He went back and changed into the normal clothes he came in with. I gave him my account details, and he wired the money plus an extra pay for taking my time. Derek offered to take me home, but I refused and told him I could manage. Before he left, Derek gave me his private card and told me to call him if I needed anything. I was hesitant at first, but I collected it. He also promised to come around after he got back from the event he wanted to attend, and he drove away. I was very happy because I delivered what he ordered and even gave me an extra tip. I checked my phone to see what time it was, and guess what, guys? It was 10 p.m. I was so shocked. I felt really bad because Frederick had taken time to prepare dinner for the both of us. I stood for a while before I was able to get a cab. While I was on my way home, I kept trying my husband's lines, but still not reachable. I kept on praying that he won't be angry with me for not keeping my promise. I got to my destination and I paid the cabman. I headed to the door and knocked. I knocked for a while, but no response. So I used my spare key and opened the door. I opened the door and met my husband deeply asleep. He must have waited for me, I thought to myself. I proceeded to the dining table and I saw that Frederick had prepared different meals for us to eat. I couldn't wake him up, and so I went to change into my nightwear. I was sad, guys. The next morning, I apologized to him and promised to make it up to him. From the look on his face, I knew that he was very angry about it, but chose to let it slide. I quickly went and prepared for him that day. I made breakfast for us, and we headed out to our place of work. I got to my store and saw that my staff had already started working. I was very pleased with them. They were very hardworking and didn't give me any reason to complain about anything. A few weeks later, Derek showed up to my store again. He told me how everyone complimented on the dress I made for him. From there, Derek and I became close. He often came to my store to have his clothes done or to keep me company. We hung out a couple of times together outside my store, from coffee dates to movie nights. We kept our personal life private, or should I say, I kept my relationship status private from Derek. He never asked if I was single or not. At that point, I was just having fun and didn't see the need to tell him. But Derek told me that he just got out of a broken relationship at that time. I felt bad for him because he was such a handsome guy that shouldn't be heartbroken by any lady. So guys, I didn't tell Derek that I was married. We kept on going out together. I did it in such a way that none of my staff knew what was going on between us. We kept on meeting at secret places to hang out together. Derek knew how to make a lady comfortable. He bought me a lot of things and also took me out to a lot of concerts. Before I met Derek, I forgot that I loved going to parties because of my hectic work schedules. But Derek often advised me to work less and party more. He also said that that's why I employed staff. They are meant to relieve me of my workload. I agreed with him and I left the work for my employees to handle while I went out with him. My husband didn't know about Derek or my secret affairs. At that time, I didn't see the need to tell him because I was just relieving myself from work. And also there was nothing serious going on between Derek and I. Few months after Derek and I started dating, he asked me if we could travel out of town to go see places. He promised to be fun if I agreed to the offer, but I told him to give me time to think about it. I got back from work that very day and met Frederick on the couch watching TV. We exchanged our greetings and I headed to the bathroom to change. I came down after a couple of minutes and went to eat dinner. After I had my dinner, I was about to go up when Frederick called me and told me he wanted to discuss something with me. I nodded and sat down and asked him what it was. He looked at me and asked me if everything was okay and if there was anything I'm hiding from him. I was confused at that moment because I didn't understand what he meant by that. I told him that everything was okay and he didn't stress further. I tried asking him why, but he said he was done talking to me. I got annoyed with the way he responded, and I told him immediately. Before I could understand what was going on, Frederick had fumed up. He yelled at me and told me to leave. I left angrily and went to bed. Few minutes later, I was over what had transpired between me and my husband. The thought of Derek came to my mind and I felt happy again. I slept off thinking about him. The next morning, I made up my mind that I was going to the trip Derek offered me. I told my husband that I was having a business out of town and I would be back in 3 days. He agreed and I left for Derek's house. I didn't pack much so it won't be suspicious. I went to his house and we were set to move, but he got a call from someone. I didn't know who it was and I didn't bother asking him. A few minutes later, he walked up to me and told me that something had happened. I asked him what it was, but he didn't leave much details. He told me that he needed some money to sort out some things. He asked me if I can lend him some amount of money and he promised to pay me back as soon as he gets the money. I agreed because I knew that he was capable of paying me back, and again, that was his first time asking me for money. So, I told him to give me an hour to arrange for it. Our trip was canceled and I headed back to my store. I felt disappointed because I wanted to hang out with Derek outside our town. I went to my office and did some calculations and called Derek to send his details. Few minutes later, I wired him the money. He called and thanked me. I started sorting out a few orders and got to work with my employees. Few days later, I called Derek to hear from him. I haven't heard anything from him since the last time I wired him the money. I wanted to know if everything was okay with him. He picked up the phone and I asked if everything was okay. He said yes and would come see me in a couple of minutes. After getting off the phone with him, my husband walked into my store. I wasn't expecting him because it had been a while since he came to see me at the store. Frederick walked in looking sad. I asked him what happened, and he told him that there was an emergency at his workplace and he needed some money. He explained that someone tampered with the figures at his office and he's at the verge of losing his work. I felt sad for him, and at the same time, I was helpless because it hadn't been long since I gave Derek money. I didn't tell my husband because he would be very angry with me. So I made a few arrangements to help my husband out because I didn't want him to lose his job. I was able to come up with something, and I gave my husband the money. I told him to keep me updated with things at his office. He left immediately, and he called me to tell me that he would get back to me soon. Not long after my husband left, Derek came. I asked him about what had happened a few days ago, but he looked like someone that wasn't in trouble. He told me that I shouldn't worry about my money, that he would pay back in a couple of days. I didn't think twice about it because I knew that Derek would pay me back. So guys, after Derek left my store, I made arrangements to close the store. It was 5 p.m. that day and I wanted to get back home early to know more about what went wrong in Frederick's workplace. I drove home and opened the door. Immediately, I entered the house and noticed a piece of paper on the center table. I didn't pay attention to it because I thought maybe it was my husband that had left it there. I went upstairs and freshened up. I went downstairs after a few minutes to call Frederick. I kept on calling him, but no response. I sent him a text message to know if everything was okay, but he didn't respond to any of my texts or calls. I went to the kitchen and prepared something for myself because I was very hungry at that time. I finished eating and decided to go watch some movies. I saw the white piece of paper and I thought of opening the paper to see what it was. Guess what, guys? It was not just an ordinary piece of paper, guys. It was a divorce papers. Update. So guys, Frederick served me divorce papers. He signed the papers, folded it, and placed it on the place I would be able to see it. Attached to the divorce papers, there was a written note from my husband. In the notes, Frederick stated that he knew about my infidelity and acted like he was ignorant about it. Not only that, guys, my husband also said that he knew Derek. They both worked at the same place. They teamed up together to scam me of my money since I decided to play them both and also with their emotions. My husband also wrote in the letter that I shouldn't bother calling him or even looking for him because he had signed the divorce papers and left the town with the money he and Derek scammed me of. I was reading the letter and didn't notice when I fell on my knees. I cried bitterly. My husband had taken the worst revenge on me. My life had been ruined because of that revenge. The money I gave both my husband and Derek was from my business. I didn't know what to do. I tried calling both their lines, but it was not reachable. I went throughout that night. Update. Guys, it's been a month since my husband got divorced. All means to reach out to him were in vain. I discovered that he had blocked my lines and also blocked me on all social media platforms. Apparently I got to know that Derek and my husband were co-workers. It was a few days ago that my husband told me all about what happened. Derek was recently transferred to my husband's workplace a few months ago. The time Derek and I were getting to know each other, he only told me that he had recently moved in because of work. I didn't bother to ask him the type of work he was doing. On the other hand, my husband had seen Derek coming to see me at my store a couple of times, and he decided to follow us to all the places we went to together. He called Derek and told him that he was going out with his wife. Derek didn't know that I was married because I kept it away from him. He was so angry and brought up the idea of scamming me. I don't know what to do right now. My business is crumbling. All the customers that ordered for designs are requesting for a refund because I haven't been able to meet their demands. I'm currently owing a huge amount of money because I've used all the money I had. I have sold most of my things and it seems like the figures keep adding up. I tried calling Derek, but he had already blocked my lines. He didn't return the money I gave him, and my husband is not even planning to see me. I have made a very big mistake by cheating on my husband with a total stranger. Derek scammed me and ran away with my money. I really messed up. This is my story, guys. Goodbye.